Okay, so we are live this evening here at Sri Chaitanya Saraswati West London. Our Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas, past, present, and future. And we have a really nice question this evening, which has come from Gadadhar Prabhu, a young devotee in Mexico. There's a few Gadadhars in Mexico. This is Gadadhar from Orizaba, Veracruz. So the question is about Vaishnava Aparadha. We have read about the offenses that we should avoid. We have read about not listening to offenders saying bad things about somebody, and of course, run away from the place where a pure devotee is being offended. How can we confront or avoid these situations? What happens if what is being said is true? Very good point. Like, what if somebody is criticizing a Vaishnava, but what they're saying is actually true? Very nice point. And in the case of this being true, are these things still offenses? How can we deal with all of this? I find myself in an ocean of fear and confusion. How can we know what is true and what is not? What should we do if we see something that, according to what we have read and heard from pure devotees, is wrong? Should we do something or even say something? This is very difficult for me to understand. In the book Sri Guru and His Grace from Srila Sridhar Maharaj, a very detailed description is given about a true guru and all related to it. However, how can someone with no vision know the differences? How can someone with no vision decide what is what? It's so nice, really, very nicely expressed, very conscious. This is a question that comes from someone who is very consciously practicing. Yes, these are all very practical, relevant questions for our spiritual life. And this is something that there is, in my experience, there is much confusion, surrounding this. Devotees get very afraid about Vaishnava Aparadha, but there's also a lack of clarity as to what constitutes Vaishnava Aparadha. And essentially, Vaishnava Aparadha, what constitutes, what makes the difference between Vaishnava Aparadha and non-Vaishnava Aparadha is not necessarily what is being said, but the intention behind it. The determining factor is intention. So I mean, there's many points which are brought up here, so we can go through them one by one. So that first establish that point, that what is aparad, what is offense? It is the intention. So, something may be said that is apparently critical about a Vaishnava, but it is not said with the spirit of criticism. It is not spoken with the spirit of envy or gossip. It may be spoken in a mood of instruction, in a mood of observation for instructional purposes. There's a very, very helpful article, I was just looking it up, that Srila Bhakti Thakur wrote, all about the subject of Vaishnava Ninda, it is called. Criticism of the Vaishnavas. And there he goes to great lengths in that article, first defining who is a Vaishnav, and then explains the three types of Vaishnava Ninda, which covers pretty much everything. To criticize a Vaishnav for something they did before they surrendered, to criticize a Vaishnav for their faults while they're in the process of surrendering, and to criticize them for mistakes that they accidentally commit. So everything's covered there. There's no room. But then at the end of the article, Srila Bhakti Thakur, he more or less concludes saying that however, for instructional purposes, then the faults of a Vaishnava may be pointed out. And there are, and we see that in different places in the scriptures. We see that in guru sometimes, that they may point out, this is what not to do, So it can be very helpful, if we need to give instruction to others, or simply for our own instruction, if we are observing, we may observe the faults that a Vaishnava has, for our benefit, like in the mood of a student, we are not there to in an envious mood point out their faults, but in the mood of a student, we want to improve ourselves. We need to understand, because this is the thing, we need to understand what is the path of truth. So there's also a famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam saying that in order to make progress, one must learn both science and nescience, or truth and ignorance, side by side. You have to learn what's the right path, and you also have to learn what is the wrong path in order to support your staying on the right path. So that is also helpful, and that is indirectly supporting your positive progress. So, we have to develop that type of spiritual discrimination, that type of clarity, to for our own benefit, to stay on the path of truth, to be able to recognize what is truth and what is untruth. Who is a good example for us? We don't just blindly, we will give our respect to everyone, but who we will put our faith in, it's a different matter. So we will, we need to have some discrimination, like who is actually following the path in a real way, in an authentic way. Who can I give my heart to? Who can I give my faith to? Who can I really trust? And who is following some superficial conception of Krishna consciousness? Who's following, a societal or some external idea of what Krishna consciousness is? We need to understand what that is and recognize who has that and who has the proper idea. So it is necessary to have that discriminating eye, to develop that discriminating eye. One mistake that I see persons make, and I'm sure I've made it myself, is we think we have to save the world, So, we're not sure about, or we think badly about somebody, and then we tell everybody about it. And sometimes it can be innocent. That's more what I'm talking about. Often it's done with an offensive mentality. We see persons go on a campaign about another Vaishnava, but sometimes it's actually kind of innocent. But that's not helpful. We should give. First of all, we need to save ourselves, and second of all, if somebody has specific faith in us, and somebody is asking us, what is your advice about this person or that person, then we will tell them. But otherwise, let people work things out for themselves and, at their own pace and their own time. But yeah, that discriminating eye, it is healthy, as long as it is not with an envious, or an inimical mentality. Srila Gurudev, he said that when he was young in the mat, he used to inquire from Srila Sridhar Maharaj about, he was coming as a 17-year-old boy to the mat and not knowing anyone or anything, and different persons are visiting. And Gurudev said he used to ask Srila Sridhar Maharaj about, what's the lowdown, on I don't remember the word he used, but that idea, about these different Vaishnavas who would visit, who are they, what are they about, like that, and Gurudev said Srila Sridhar Maharaj would very carefully tell him, would carefully tell him, what is their position in a spiritual sense? What is their relationship with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like that, and Gurudev said Guru Maharaj would carefully tell me about that Vaishnava. So it is necessary. to have some discrimination, and if and when appropriate, to share that with others or to hear that from others also. If it's done in the proper mood, in the proper context, in the proper setting, then it is an appropriate thing, it is a helpful thing. But if it is an environment of criticism, then we should avoid that. And this is another so he's saying, so what if somebody is speaking badly about a Vaishnava? It depends on the context. It depends what type of mood that they're speaking in. If they're speaking in a very unfriendly and critical mood, then just try and leave. If they're, and this is where it gets, this is the tricky thing, that number one, they're speaking directly to you, and number two, it's a senior Vaishnava. It's a senior Vaishnava criticizing another Vaishnava, like personally speaking to you. That's the hardest situation to get out of, because if they're talking to somebody else, you can just like leave, but they're talking to you. And if it's somebody like junior or your equal, then you can try and like adjust their vision. Say, well, I think we should be careful about how we discuss this Vaishnava. We can try and give them some good advice. We have to be careful, and but if it's a senior Vaishnava, then you don't have the position. And it's against etiquette, Vaishnava etiquette, to instruct a Vaishnava who's senior than you. So I mean, what I do is I'll just say, I don't feel qualified to comment. I'm a junior. It's not my position to discuss, the qualities or faults of Vaishnavas who are, senior to me or any Vaishnava. You can make some. You have to be a little clever. There's a line in what's it called? Prema Vivarta, where Jagadananda Pandit he says that avoiding bad association is like an art. Like you have to be a little tricky sometimes. I was so happy when I read that. It was like that. That validated like things that I do. Make up some excuse. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. I gotta go now. Oh no, I just remembered. I left something on the stove, or I have to go and do this. You can come up with some excuse. Or so there's one devotee couple here, that this husband and wife, and they have a system. Like if they see the other one is stuck in like a conversation they don't want to be stuck in, then they'll like have some signal, and then the other one will go and like help them out, like oh, can you come over here? I need your help. So sometimes we have to be a little smart. Yeah, you sometimes have to be a little tricky. We can't always be direct because we'll upset persons. And then another issue is that devotees get worried about is if they make a Vaishnava angry, but it wasn't actually their intention, So does that count as Vaishnava Aparadha? Maybe you said something insensitive. You didn't mean to, but you said something insensitive. Or you didn't massage the ego of a senior Vaishnava. They wanted some prestige and you didn't give it to them. Then they get upset. So does that count as Vaishnava Aparadha? So there's actually a place where Srila Sridhar Maharaj talks about that. And he says that a Madhyam Adhikar Vaishnava, and now remember, Madhyam Adhikar is pretty high, but still, Madhyam Adhikar Vaishnava still has anarthas. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, if it was not our intention to disturb them, but they have taken offense, and that is due to their own faults. So, that is due to their own anartha, that anger has come. So yeah, it would be the intelligent thing to try to harmonize the situation, to keep peace with that person. But we shouldn't, be in terror that, oh, I offended a Vaishnava, I'm going to hell. Sometimes you see that simple-hearted devotees, they get really worried because so and so shouted at them, and oh, I'm going to hell. We do see that sometimes. No, we should have some common sense. If Vaishnava is behaving like that, we should understand this is not Vaishnava behavior, But then the danger comes in, and what it actually turns into is like this horrible cycle where we're creating offenses to each other, So you say something not intending to offend a Vaishnava, they take offense. And then you, seeing their non-Vaishnava reaction, then you actually become critical, and then you actually make offense. And then it starts this whole ugly dynamic where you're both being offensive to each other. Because the thing is, everybody has some degree of Vaishnavata. So it doesn't matter if they're like a very junior Vaishnava, they still have some quality within them, some real spiritual quality. So if you offend them, if you have an inimical mood towards them, then then we are harming ourselves. So we have to be so careful, We have to keep that magnanimous view when we see these faults in the Vaishnavas. It's like a kind of trap we can get into. Seeing we don't want to go down to that level. We want to keep enough distance. We want to maintain like a healthy, find that point of distance which enables us to have a positive and healthy dynamic with all the Vaishnavas. We want to situate ourselves in a particular point where we can maintain healthy dealings with all of the Vaishnavas. What else? What should we do if we see some deviations? If we see something that according to what we have read and heard from pure devotees is wrong, should we do something or even say something? It depends. If it's a minor thing, then no, we don't need to worry too much. We want to keep a magnanimous spirit and remember that whoever is coming to take up the practice of pure devotion under the guidance of Guru and Vaishnava, they're already doing the most purifying thing. And we don't need to worry about them, actually. They're already, whatever wrong they may have or are doing, they're already doing the most rectifying thing. So it's not for us to worry about them. Krishna is taking care of them. Guru is taking care of them. And we can't expect everybody to be perfect. So, we don't, we need to relax a little bit and, let people have their space, let people make their own mistakes. And, concentrate the maximum degree. And that's something that, I can say for myself. I've been practicing Krishna consciousness since I was born, so... And I've been in the mission like 15 years now, like serving in the mission. So, it's from that experience that I've had that I have a very like broad view. Some of the devotees who inspired me the most, they couldn't follow all the principles, And some of the devotees who could follow all the principles, they didn't really inspire me, So, ideally they go hand in hand, but the essential thing is that someone has a living spirit of devotion If somebody has a desire to do service, if somebody has a desire to have association with the Vaishnavas, then we actually don't need to worry about them. They're healthy. And then when should we worry? If it's something more serious, if it's somebody who's directly in our care, who we have some responsibility for, then we should take, more of a, take some more interest, have some more concern. But on the whole, it's like, we should try to think that these things will work themselves out, It depends too on your role, like if you're in the position of a temple manager, then you have the duty to watch all of these things. But otherwise, we can, keep a broad and a generous view as much as possible, and worry more about ourselves. What we can also do is because we have to consider, if we do decide that, okay, it's necessary to say something, this person's doing something really bad, then we have to consider, am I the right person to say it? It depends on our relationship with that person. This is another point that comes up, that devotees feel this pressure, I've got to say it to them, I've got to say it, it's my duty. But you can do that and just make it worse, So we have to be practical. Like, okay, you did your duty, but you've just made the situation 100 times worse now. Now the person's resentful and angry, So, we have to be practical. Like, do they want to hear from me? Do I have that kind of relationship with them? So then what we can do is if there is someone else who is in a position to say something to them, then we can tell them, then we can consider that we've done our duty. Yeah, there was one lady who came to me a few months ago, and she was in so much anxiety because she felt like she was supposed to be telling everybody, And I was like, don't worry, you don't have to do that. If they'll hear from you happily, but if not, then just let it go, And if there's somebody they'll hear from, then tell them. And if not, then what can you do? There was one occasion, Swarnangi Didi, she told me there were some newcomers who were staying on the land in Sokel. And they were, I don't know the details, maybe they were like smoking or something like that. It's a big piece of land, so there's lots of little corners and lots of bushes and trees and hills and so on, places to do such things. And they were doing different things that were inappropriate. And Swarnangi had tried to talk to them, but they weren't giving her any attention. And she was feeling this pressure, like it's my responsibility, to tell them. And so she asked, she didn't tell Gurudev specifically what the situation was, but she said, what should I do? I can't remember exactly. I have it written down. But along the lines of, what should I do? What should we do if we see someone's doing something wrong? And Gurudev, and they don't really want to listen to you. Something like that. And Gurudev said, if they will hear from you, then you can tell them. And he said, if not, then to heaven or hell, let them go. She was shocked. To heaven or hell, let them go. Just detach yourself, we give ourselves more of a burden than we need to carry, a lot of the time. And another thing that happens is our ego gets involved. Then it can start out with good intentions, and then it turns into an ego trip. Like, oh, they're not listening to me. Then it becomes like a control issue. Like, they're not submitting to my authority. So, yeah, so that type of detachment, that Gurudev expressed. Kumkum Didi, she told of this exchange. It was like a very, it was like a 5-minute exchange with Gurudev, but it was so profound. It very deeply affected her. That Gurudev was, it was on the installation of Mahaprabhu on the morning or something, or maybe it was the day before, and Gurudev was in the temple room, and then, and they were preparing the altar, and there was a lady there who was like putting the Guru Parampara pictures on the altar, and Gurudev was like observing and giving some instructions sometimes. And then there was one point where he was trying to tell her something, the lady, and Kumkum was like also seated there with Gurudev in the temple room. And then there was a particular thing that Gurudev tried to tell this lady who was on the altar setting things up. Like about 3 times, Gurudev tried to say, no, do it like this, do it like this. And she wasn't properly listening to Gurudev. And she kept saying, no, Gurudev, you'll see what I'm doing, you'll see. And she didn't get the point that Gurudev was trying to make. And then Gurudev just like chuckled and withdrew and said, oh, what can I do? And then meanwhile, Kumkum had been observing the scene, like getting upset, like she's not listening to Gurudev. And then when she saw how Gurudev like just completely shifted tone and shifted gears and just like, because he could have said like, listen, you stupid lady, like, let me spell it out for you. Like, he could have easily done that. Or he could have done it politely, I'm exaggerating. But he could have just been like, that's what most of us would do. Like, no, you don't understand. Please, listen to me. Like, we would assert ourselves. Like, this is how we want it to be. But Gurudev saw, like, she wasn't receptive. She wasn't open to hearing. So he just withdrew with a chuckle. Like, there was no irritation, nothing at all. Like me, like I'd be getting frustrated and upset. He just totally withdrew and like commented, to Kumkum and whoever else, what can I do? Like, what can I do? And Kumkum, she was so astounded to see how Gurudev handled that. And she was like going like the same thought process I'm going through. She went through that. And then she said she went flying across the room and fell at Gurudev's feet. She said, oh, Gurudev, I have so much ego. Because she was feeling like if I was in that situation, I'd be like asserting my ego. So she said, oh, Gurudev, I have so much ego. And then Gurudev again, like totally shifted. And he said, what was it exactly that he said? He said, your ego is that you are a servant. I don't remember, maybe he said a servant of Guru or Guru and Gauranga or something like that. But he expressed like what is proper ego. She was saying ego in a negative sense. And then he like totally flipped it around. This all happened in the space of 5 minutes. And Gurudev was doing all these like subtle like tweaks, like consciousness tweaks, all in 5 minutes, like all these things happened. We're actually living in the world of ego, And so Gurudev was completely transcendental to that and giving this revelation sometimes, like cut. But all in this like very gentle and beautiful and sweet way. But Gurudev, he was just, he wouldn't force things on anybody. If they didn't want to hear it, he wouldn't tell them. So yeah, we have to be careful with all, we don't want to be the policeman. We've seen that before, like self-appointed police in the temple. We're the one like setting it straight, laying down the law. Like no. And actually, the most powerful way to instruct is through example. Through our own example. And to demonstrate like the happiness, because the idea is not just following the rules, the idea is like serving with heart. And as a part of that, we're observing so many guidelines that have been given, which are supporting the process of surrender. So it's not about, a police academy, It's not meant to be, how many rounds is everyone chanting and how many whatever, It's not a competition, It's not a performance-based program. So yeah, we don't want to create that kind of atmosphere. I think that covers these questions. We can also mention that if we are in a position, if some offense is being made or some offense is being spoken, then and we're in a position to correct it, then it is neglect if we don't. If we're not in the position to do that, then it's better we don't. But if we are in the position and we don't correct it, then the fault comes to us, actually. It's mentioned in Mahabharata, in the case of Draupadi, that the persons present, when she was being disrobed, then the persons present who were in a position to stop it, but didn't, more blame came to them than to the perpetrators of that. Because they're just ignorant. If someone is someone has particular habits or tendencies that they're carrying from previous, lifestyle, previous association, then that's ignorance, basically. And we cannot blame them so much for that. But it's up to those who know better to instruct them, those who have the authority, the knowledge, and the position to instruct them to do so. So if we're in that position, and we don't assert that, if we just go along with it passively, then part of that offense, that will come to us. So, that is important. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when there was that incident when that Brahmin, very foolish Brahmin in Vrindavan, he said that we can bless Raghunath Das Goswami because there's a prayer of Raghunath where he's asking for the blessings of the Brahmins and for the residents of Vrindavan. And this Brahmin, he was a Brajbasi, and he was also a Brahmin. So he was saying, we can bless Raghunath Das Goswami. And he didn't even say it directly in the presence of Saraswati Thakur, but I think it was in a public meeting of some kind. And so that remark came to the ear of Saraswati Thakur, and Saraswati Thakur started fasting. And he fasted for a few days until that Brahmin was brought to his senses and came to apologize. And somebody asked Saraswati Thakur, why did you pay him any attention? He's just a fool, who cares what a fool says? And Saraswati Thakur said, if I was living as a Babaji, then I would just quietly leave this place. But because I'm in this position of an acharya, I'm riding this big motor car in Vrindavan, then I have this duty to protect the dignity of our sampradaya. So I have to say, it's my duty to say something. But if I was in another position, just as living as a simple Babaji, then I would quietly continue on my way. So we have to consider, what is our position, what is our duty, and act accordingly. And it can be difficult sometimes. We all have different weaknesses. Some persons may have a weakness of being too aggressive, of being too eager to say something or do something. But then others may have the fault, and I'm more on that side, of being too passive and not wanting to say anything or do anything, just go along with things. But that's also a fault. So, we have to have the courage. If we can see that it's our position to say something in this particular situation, then we have to. So, these are all, fine points. It is all, time, place, circumstance. But I think the main answer here is our intention, in regards to what constitutes Vaishnava Aparadha. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll stop there. Anyone want to add anything? Finish there.
Now, the Sunda calls the difference between, because of course there's a gradients of offences, but actual Vaishnava Aparadha, he likens it to premeditative murder. But there's he said, there'll often be some clash of ego between senior Vaishnavas, newer Vaishnavas, and the senior and newer Vaishnavas. But that's just a fairly normal thing. Of course, it constitutes some, it will hinder our progress in some way, but Vaishnava Aparadha is more like premeditative murder in comparison.
Yeah, it depends on the degree of animosity within our heart towards that Vaishnav. Yes. Okay. I will stop there. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev.